Rain lashed Lillian Monroe's rusty sedan, blurring Atlanta's neon skyline. Her knuckles blanched on the steering wheel, eyes stinging from tears she couldn't afford to shed. In the back seat, 6-month-old Sophie whimpered, her feverish body swaddled in a thin blanket. The hospital's words echoed like a death knell. Sophie's rare leukemia required specialized treatment. $300,000, maybe more, or she wouldn't survive the month. Lillian, a 29-year-old single mother, had nothing. Her diner wages barely covered rent. Her savings were drained, and Sophie's father had vanished long ago. Desperation clawed at her chest. She'd heard of Daniel Grant, a black tech millionaire whose philanthropy made headlines. A long shot, but her only hope. Her phone buzzed, payment due in 48 hours. Lillian's breath hitched, her foot pressing harder on the gas. Grant Enterprises loomed ahead, a glass tower piercing the stormy sky. She parked crookedly, clutching Sophie's blanket as rain soaked her threadbare jacket. Her heart pounded. Would Daniel even see her? A nobody, a drenched mess, begging for a miracle? The lobby doors gleamed, but a security guard blocked her path, his face stone. "No walk-ins," he barked. Lillian's voice cracked, pleading, "Please, it's for my daughter." Sophie coughed, a weak, heart-wrenching sound. The guard's eyes flickered, but he didn't budge. Lillian's knees wobbled, despair rising like a tide. She'd come so far, only to be stopped here? Then, a deep voice cut through the rain's patter. Let her through. Daniel Grant stood in the doorway, his silhouette sharp against the lobby's glow. Lillian's pulse surged. Was this her chance, or another door about to slam shut? Daniel's eyes met hers, unreadable. Would he listen, or send her back into the storm? Lillian's sneakers squeaked on the marble floor of Grant Enterprises' lobby, water dripping from her soaked jacket. Sophie's faint coughs echoed in her arms, each one a knife to her heart. Daniel Grant, tall and impeccable in a tailored suit, led her to a sleek office. His presence was commanding, his dark eyes scanning her with polite detachment. "I don't have much time," he said, voice smooth but distant. "What do you need?" Words spilled from Lillian, a frantic torrent about Sophie's leukemia, the crushing bills, and her dwindling hope. She clutched Sophie tighter, her baby's warmth the only anchor in her unraveling world. Daniel sat behind a massive desk, hands steepled, listening. His face was a mask, but when Sophie let out a soft cry, something flickered in his gaze. Brief, unguarded, gone in a blink. "I get dozens of requests like this," Daniel said, leaning back. "Why should I help you?" Lillian's throat tightened. She hadn't expected this cold pragmatism. Her hand shook as she pulled out Sophie's hospital bracelet, its tiny beads glinting under the office lights. "She's all I have," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'll do anything." Daniel's eyes lingered on the bracelet, then on Sophie's pale face. For a moment, his stoic facade wavered, but he quickly recovered. "I'll have my assistant look into it," he said, standing abruptly. Lillian's heart sank. Was this a brush-off? A polite way to say no? She rose, clutching Sophie, her hope fraying like her worn shoes. As Lillian turned to leave, Sophie's coughs turned violent, her tiny body convulsing. Lillian cried out, dropping to her knees. Daniel froze, his hand hovering over the phone. Would he act? Or turn away? The office spun as Lillian cradled Sophie, her baby's coughs growing weaker, each one a plea for life. Daniel snapped into action, barking orders into his phone. "Get an ambulance, now." His voice was sharp, urgent, cutting through Lillian's panic. Paramedics rushed in, their boots thundering on the marble floor. Lillian clung to Sophie's hand as they whisked her to the hospital, Daniel following in his sleek black car, his jaw tight. At the hospital, doctors stabilized Sophie, but the prognosis was grim. Without the specialized treatment, her time was short. Lillian sat by her daughter's bedside, her face hollow, exhaustion etching lines deeper than her 29 years. Daniel lingered in the doorway, his suit rumpled, a stark contrast to his polished demeanor hours ago. "She's a fighter," he said softly, his first unguarded words. Lillian met his gaze, her eyes raw with gratitude and desperation. For the first time, Daniel truly saw her. Not a petitioner, but a mother on the brink. He asked about her life, and Lillian's story poured out. The diner job, the absent father, the endless bills piling up like a prison. Daniel listened, his face softening. "I lost my sister to cancer when I was young," he admitted, his voice low, heavy with old pain. "I know what it's like to feel helpless." Lillian's breath caught. Was this a crack in his armor? A reason he might care? A doctor interrupted, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Monroe, we need to discuss payment for Sophie's ongoing care." Lillian's face crumpled, her hands trembling. Daniel stepped forward, but his phone rang, an urgent call from his board. Would he stay or walk away? Daniel's phone buzzed insistently, the board's demands flashing on the screen. He silenced it, his eyes locked on Lillian's tear-streaked face. "Cover the immediate costs," he told the doctor, sliding a black credit card across the desk. Lillian gasped, tears spilling over. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over Sophie's monitor beeps. Daniel didn't answer, but his gaze held hers, a silent vow, heavy with intent. Over the next days, Daniel paid for Sophie's treatments, but Lillian sensed his detachment creeping back. He was a titan, his empire demanding his focus. Yet he visited Sophie's room, bringing small gifts, a teddy bear, a music box that played Twinkle Twinkle. Lillian's hope grew, fragile but persistent, though fear gnawed at her. Was this charity a fleeting gesture or something deeper? One evening, Daniel found Lillian asleep by Sophie's bed, her hand clutching her daughter's tiny fingers. He studied her face, etched with love and exhaustion, and something stirred, a memory of his sister, her frail hand in his. He couldn't walk away, not yet, but his world was pulling him in two. Daniel's assistant burst in, her face pale. "Sir, the board's threatening to oust you over these unauthorized expenses." Daniel's jaw tightened, his hand curling into a fist. Would he risk his empire for a stranger's child? Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds as Daniel faced his board, their faces a wall of skepticism in the sleek conference room. "You're funneling company funds into a personal cause," the chairman accused, his voice icy. Daniel stood tall, his tone unwavering. "It's not personal, it's human." But the board wasn't swayed, issuing an ultimatum. Stop the payments or lose his position as CEO. Back at the hospital, Lillian noticed the tension in Daniel's shoulders, the shadows under his eyes. "Is this costing you too much?" she asked, guilt twisting her gut. Daniel brushed it off, but his guarded smile betrayed his turmoil. That night, he sat by Sophie's bed, watching her sleep, her tiny hand curling around his finger. A pang hit him, love, guilt, resolve all tangled together. Lillian overheard a nurse whispering about Daniel's board troubles and confronted him in the hallway, her voice trembling. "I can't let you lose everything for us." Daniel's gaze softened, his hand grazing her arm. "It's not just about you or Sophie anymore," he said, his words cryptic, heavy with meaning. Lillian's heart raced. What drove him to risk so much? A lawyer arrived, holding papers for Daniel to sign, severing his ties with Grant Enterprises. Lillian watched, horrified, as Daniel took the pen. Would he sacrifice his legacy for them? Daniel set the pen down, refusing to sign. Instead, he negotiated a compromise, diverting personal funds to cover Sophie's care, preserving his position for now. Lillian's relief was palpable, but her gratitude came with a question. Why go this far? Daniel's eyes met hers, softer than she'd ever seen. "Because I see my sister in Sophie," he said, "and my mother in you, fighting when there's no fight left." Their conversations deepened over late-night hospital coffees. Daniel shared his rise from a cramped Atlanta apartment, his sister's laughter a light in their poverty, her cancer a shadow that shaped his ambition. Lillian opened up about her dream of nursing school, derailed by betrayal and bills. A quiet bond formed, rooted in shared pain and fragile hope. Sophie's giggles, rare but growing, became their shared joy. One afternoon, Sophie reached for Daniel's tie, her eyes bright with a smile. He laughed, a rich sound that warmed Lillian's heart. She felt something new, A connection beyond gratitude, a spark she couldn't name. But a doctor's grim news shattered the moment. Sophie needed a rare procedure, available only in Europe. Lillian's hope faltered, her hands clutching Sophie's blanket. The procedure required a specialist in Zurich, far beyond Daniel's current reach. Lillian's voice broke as she whispered, "What if we can't get there?" Daniel's jaw set, but his silence spoke volumes. Would this be the end of their miracle? Daniel refused to accept defeat. He burned through his network, calling in favors to track down the Zurich specialist, Dr. Elena Voss. Lillian watched, awed by his relentless drive, her heart torn between hope and dread. "Why are you doing this?" she asked one night, Sophie asleep between them. Daniel's eyes, shadowed but fierce, met hers. "Because I can't lose another fight like this." Days blurred into nights as Daniel worked, his phone a lifeline to leads that kept slipping away. Lillian stayed by Sophie's side, praying, her hands tracing the beads of Sophie's hospital bracelet. Tension mounted as hope dwindled. Dr. Voss was booked months out, her schedule impenetrable. Then a breakthrough. Voss agreed to help, but only if Sophie reached Zurich within a week. Daniel's relief was short-lived. Logistics loomed. Medical transport, visas, costs. Lillian's fear surged, her voice trembling. "What if we're too late?" Daniel gripped her hand, his touch steady. "We won't be." But the clock was ticking, each second a threat to Sophie's fragile life. Daniel booked a private jet, but a storm grounded all flights out of Atlanta. Lillian's panic flared as thunder rattled the hospital windows. Would they lose their chance? The storm raged, lightning splitting the sky as Daniel arranged a medical transport van to a nearby airstrip. Lillian clutched Sophie, her baby's fever spiking again, each cough a dagger. Daniel drove, his focus unyielding despite the wind howling against the van. Lillian's heart pounded, fear and gratitude warring within her. Why was he risking so much for them? Halfway to the airstrip, a tree crashed across the road, its branches a tangled barricade. Lillian's breath stopped, her arms tightening around Sophie. Daniel leapt out, rain soaking his shirt as he rallied the medical team to clear the debris. Lillian joined him, desperation fueling her strength. Their eyes locked through the downpour, a moment of raw connection that steadied her shaking hands. They worked frantically, the storms roared drowning their shouts. Lillian's hands bled from tugging at branches, but she didn't stop. Daniel's voice cut through. "We're almost there." But time was slipping, and Sophie's coughs grew fainter. Lillian's heart screamed. Would they make it? The van's engine sputtered and died just as they cleared the tree. Daniel cursed, slamming the hood open in the rain. Lillian's voice broke. "Daniel, we can't stop now." Would they be stranded? A mechanic, summoned by Daniel's quick call, revived the van under the storm's relentless assault. They reached the airstrip, where a small medical plane waited, its lights piercing the fog. Sophie was secured in a cradle, monitors beeping softly. Daniel held Lillian's hand as they boarded, the plane shaking through turbulent skies. Each jolt tightened Lillian's grip, her fear for Sophie a living thing. In Zurich, Dr. Voss met them, her calm efficiency a lifeline. The procedure began, an 8-hour ordeal that left Lillian and Daniel pacing the waiting room. Their silence was heavy, laced with shared anxiety. Lillian's voice trembled. "What if it's not enough?" Daniel's hand found hers, his warmth grounding. "It will be," he said, but his eyes betrayed his own doubt. Hours crawled by, the hospital's sterile hum amplifying their tension. Lillian clutched Sophie's blanket, Daniel staring at the floor, lost in memories of his sister. When Dr. Voss emerged, her cautious smile sparked hope. Sophie's responding well, but recovery will be critical. Lillian's tears fell, relief and fear colliding. A hospital administrator approached, her face stern. "There's an issue with funding for Sophie's recovery care." Lillian's heart sank, her hands shaking. Daniel's jaw tightened. Would their victory unravel? Daniel didn't flinch. "I'll cover it," he said, his voice firm despite the administrator's warning that recovery could cost millions. Lillian's eyes widened, guilt surging. "You've done enough," she protested. Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. Then, he surprised her, introducing a scholarship from his foundation for nursing school. "You're meant for more than surviving, Lillian," he said. Tears spilled as she saw a future beyond despair, a dream reborn. Sophie's recovery was slow but steady, her smiles returning like spring. Daniel visited often, his gifts now joined by stories he read to Sophie, her giggles calling him Unca. Lillian saw his walls crumbling, their bond growing into something like family. She started nursing school, juggling classes and hospital visits, Daniel's support constant. One evening, as Sophie slept, Daniel gave Lillian a locket with Sophie's picture. "For strength," he said, his voice thick. Lillian's heart swelled, their eyes locking in a moment of unspoken understanding. But as visits grew shadowed, his smile strained. Daniel arrived one day, his face haunted. "I need to tell you something about my past," he said, voice low. Lillian's pulse quickened. What secret could threaten their bond? Daniel's confession came in the hospital's quiet garden, his voice heavy. Years ago, he turned away a friend's plea for help, choosing his fledgling career over their medical crisis. "They died," he said, eyes distant. "I've carried that every day." Lillian's heart ached for him, but doubt crept in. Could she trust someone who'd failed like that before? Sophie's recovery continued, her laughter a balm, but Lillian's nursing classes strained her, and Daniel's foundation faced scrutiny. A tabloid dug up his past, threatening to expose his failure as a scandal. Daniel grew distant, his visits shorter. Lillian's doubt grew, her gratitude tinged with fear. Was his help for Sophie genuine, or a way to ease his guilt? One night, Lillian found Daniel staring at Sophie's chart, his hands trembling. "I'm not that man anymore," he said, sensing her gaze. Lillian wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered, sharp and cold. A reporter ambushed Lillian outside the hospital, camera flashing. "Do you know who Daniel Grant really is?" Lillian froze, her heart pounding. Would this scandal destroy their trust? Lillian's hands shook as she faced Daniel in Sophie's room. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. He admitted his past failure, his voice raw. "I was young, selfish. Helping Sophie, it's my redemption." Lillian saw the pain in his eyes, the weight of his regret. "You're here now," she said, choosing trust over doubt, her voice steady despite her fear. But the tabloid struck, publishing a story painting Daniel's help as a PR stunt. Public backlash hit hard, donors pulling from his foundation. Daniel stood firm, but Lillian saw the toll, his eyes shadowed, his shoulders heavy. She felt responsible, her guilt a mirror to his own. Their bond, fragile but real, held them together as they faced the storm. Sophie's laughter anchored them, her recovery a light in the dark. Lillian threw herself into nursing school, determined to honor Daniel's faith in her. But the foundation's funds dwindled, threatening Sophie's ongoing care. Daniel received a letter from Dr. Voss, his face paling as he read it. Lillian's voice trembled. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer, his silence deafening. Was Sophie's recovery at risk? The letter confirmed Sophie needed one final surgery to secure her remission, a delicate, costly procedure. Daniel vowed to pay, selling personal assets to fund it, risking his financial stability. Lillian protested, tears falling. "You've given too much." Daniel's eyes burned with resolve. "This is my fight too." The surgery loomed, tension thickening the air. Lillian and Daniel leaned on each other, their shared fear forging a deeper bond. The night before, Daniel gave Lillian a journal to write her dreams for Sophie. "For hope," he said, his voice thick. Lillian clutched it, their eyes meeting in a moment of raw connection. Sophie's strength inspired them, her tiny hand gripping Daniel's finger. Lillian saw a man transformed, his past no longer a chain, but a spur to act. But the surgery's risks loomed, a shadow over their fragile hope. Dr. Voss called hours before the surgery. "We found an issue during prep." Lillian's face drained, her hands shaking. Daniel's voice was steady but strained. "What kind? Could Sophie survive this?" The surgery stretched 8 grueling hours, Lillian and Daniel waiting in a sterile room, their hands clasped. Each tick of the clock was a hammer to Lillian's heart. Daniel's silence heavy with his own fears. They didn't speak, but their shared vigil said enough. Two souls bound by hope and dread. Dr. Voss emerged, her smile weary but real. "Sophie's going to be fine." Lillian sobbed, collapsing into Daniel's arms, their relief a tidal wave. Sophie's recovery was a miracle, her laughter returning like sunlight. Daniel's foundation rebounded as their story spread, donors moved by its authenticity. Lillian excelled in nursing school, her future bright. Daniel, too, found peace, his past forgiven, not by the world but by himself. He and Lillian grew closer, their bond unspoken but unshakable. Sophie called him Unca, her trust a gift he cherished. Daniel handed Lillian an invitation, his eyes misty. "I want you and Sophie to join me for something special," he said. Lillian's heart raced. What was he planning? Daniel led Lillian and a healthy Sophie to a community center, its doors opening to a crowd. He unveiled the Sophie Grant Fund, a charity to help families facing medical crises, named for the little girl who'd changed him. Lillian's breath caught, tears falling as she realized her pain had birthed a legacy. The crowd cheered, their applause a wave of hope. Daniel offered Lillian a job running the fund, a chance to save lives. "You're the heart of this," he said, his voice steady but warm. Lillian accepted, her voice thick with emotion, knowing her struggle had purpose. Sophie, giggling, hugged Daniel, their family forged not by blood but by love. Their eyes locked, Lillian seeing the man who'd seen her at her lowest and chose compassion. Daniel saw a woman whose strength had reshaped him. Their story was a testament to empathy's power, to second chances, to hope that persists. Thank you for joining Lillian and Daniel's journey. Their story proves that kindness can rewrite destinies. Look into the eyes of those around you. Really see them. Your next act of compassion could change everything. Subscribe, share, and let's spread hope together.